Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amit Harari, and coming up in today's newscast, a controversial visit to the Temple Mount sparking outcry across the region. Meanwhile, a proposed return to the old rules after an alleged wave of immigration abuses. And finally, a rare glimpse into biblical history as archaeologists take on a tour through the Dead Sea Desert cave of Judea. The United Nations Security Council will convene in an emergency session as early as tomorrow to discuss National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's visit to Jerusalem's Flashpoint Temple Mount yesterday morning. ILTV's Steve Leibovich reports.
A day after his controversial visit to the Temple Mount brought international condemnation, Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir lashed out at the U.S. and other countries for being hypocrites. Ben-Gvir refuses to say he will not try to change the status quo on the site and calls the current situation racist against Jews. The wave of international criticism was fast in coming. Egypt issued a sharp condemnation warning of negative repercussions to security and stability in the region. Abraham Accords partner UAE called the visit a serious and provocative violation. Shortly thereafter, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced a postponement of a planned visit to the Gulf state. There were angry words from Turkey and Saudi Arabia. In Washington, the White House did not condemn the action, but said this.
So the United States stands firmly, and we've been very clear for preservation of the status quo with respect to the holy sites in Jerusalem. Any unilateral action that jeopardizes the status quo is unacceptable, and we will continue to be steadfast on that and be very clear on that.
Jordan falsely claimed that there had been a storming of the Al-Aqsa and a violation of its sanctity. Israeli Ambassador Eitan Sirkis was summoned for a dressing down. Jordan views itself as the custodian of the Muslim mosques on the Temple Mount. The 1994 peace treaty acknowledges the kingdom's special role at the site. Israel captured the Temple Mount from Jordan in the 1967 Six-Day War. Almost 2 decades earlier, the Jordanian Legion conquered the area during the 1948 War of Independence. Israel allows the Jordanian Waqf to continue to maintain religious authority on the site. Ben-Gvir spent about 15 minutes early morning in open areas on the Temple Mount, far from the mosques, never entering any of the Muslim places of worship. The visit came at a time when Jews are allowed to enter the site on a daily basis, which Ben-Gvir had done on numerous occasions. The Palestinian Authority falsely claimed the visit was part of a plot to rebuild the Jewish temple.
الذين أحبطوا مؤامرة البوابات إلى التصدي لمثل هذه الاقتحامات التي تستهدف جعل المسجد الأقصى معبدا يهوديا.
Ben-Gvir says his goal is to ensure Jewish rights at the site.
הר הבית זה המקום הכי חשוב לעם ישראל. הר הבית פתוח לכולם. עולים כאן מוסלמים, נוצרים, וכן, גם יהודים. גם יהודים. בממשלה שאני חבר בה לא תהיה אפליה גזענית, ויהודים יעלו להר הבית.
Ben-Gvir has long advocated for changing the Temple Mount status quo, which allows Muslim entry and prayer with few restrictions, while Jews can visit only during limited times, closely accompanied by police. Jews are not allowed to pray at the site. The Prime Minister's office issued a statement saying that Israel is committed to strictly protecting the status quo in the Temple Mount without any change. Other ministers had visited the Temple Mount in the past, and nothing had changed. The Temple Mount is an historic site of 2 Jewish temples that were destroyed by foreign invading powers. It's considered the holiest site in Judaism. It's also a holy site in Islam, housing the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound.
A rocket was fired at Israel overnight from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. Air raid sirens were not activated because the projectile fell short of its marked landing in an open area inside the Palestinian enclave. The attempted attack came amid threats of retaliation by Hamas after yesterday's visit of National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir to Temple Mount. Similarly, Hezbollah terror leader Hassan Nasrallah issuing veiled threats by hinting at an explosion across the region should the status quo be changed. And joining me now with more on all Temple Mount details is President of the Jerusalem Institute of Strategy and Security, Professor Ephraim Inbar. Professor Inbar, thank you so much for being with us. Now, the United States among the first to show concern regarding the status quo of Jerusalem's holy sites. Are they truly being challenged here?
No, nothing that happened yesterday was different from the established status quo on the Temple Mount. It's not the first time an Israeli member of government is going to the Temple Mount. And I think the Minister Ben Gvir, went at an early hour, and nothing happened. Basically, the visit went over quietly, and there is nothing that Americans should be worried about.
And Hezbollah and Hamas terrorists among those threatening resistance in defense of Jerusalem, but they stopped short of making concrete threats. In your opinion, what is the risk of violent escalation at this time?
I think the risk is always there because the Temple Mount is indeed a sensitive site. But the Israeli police is able to contain any violence. And hopefully, this visit, as well as other visits, will become a routine, and the world will get used to the fact that Jews are visiting the Temple Mount, praying there, and this should not be news.
Many, like Itamar Ben-Gvir, argued that the Al-Aqsa Mosque could be left alone, but that the Temple Mount complex, being holy to all Abrahamic faiths, should be open for all. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it should be open for all. If the Muslims want to close their mosque, it's their business. But the Temple Mount Plateau is a large area, and it is under Israeli sovereignty. And we should maintain the rights of every religion to visit this place.
And many Arab states in the region, including several allied nations like Jordan, like Oman, Turkey, and the UAE, condemned the visit. Are they paying lip service to their Palestinian brethren, or are relations really at risk?
I think they are paying lip service to the Palestinian cause. Maybe they pay lip service to what's called the Arab Street. But I don't think that we see any change in relations with the countries you mentioned.
Professor Ephraim Inbar, thank you so much for joining us.
You are welcome.
A crisis of trust is developing as Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara is refusing to defend the Supreme Court petitions against Aryeh Deri serving as the government minister. Prime Minister Netanyahu has to use independent counsel. ILTV's Aaron Porras reporting.
Israeli Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara is now announcing that she will not defend the appointment of Shas leader Aryeh Deri as a cabinet minister in the Supreme Court. There are currently several petitions in the High Court challenging the legality of Deri's service as Minister of Health and Minister of Interior, as well as Deputy Prime Minister, and the petitions are demanding that his appointments be cancelled immediately. Several NGOs submitting High Court petitions against the Deri appointment, arguing that his past criminal convictions should prohibit him from serving. Further, they argue that the special Knesset legislation to allow his appointment was illegitimate. But in his response to the petitions filed by independent counsel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, meantime, arguing that the Basic Law amendment allowing Deri to be appointed passed through Knesset before the government was sworn in, and as such, it cannot be challenged by the court and is not subject to the court's oversight to begin with. And while Baharav Miara is refusing to defend this position, there's growing speculation that the new Netanyahu government may seek to simply replace the Attorney General with someone more sympathetic to these views.
In an early test for the new government, the High Court issued a temporary injunction related to the removal of the yeshiva built in the settlement of Chomesh in Judea and Samaria. Palestinians claiming ownership of the land appealed to the court to remove the yeshiva. The settlement of Chomesh was evacuated by Israel as part of the disengagement from Gaza and parts from northern Samaria in a 2005 law. Prime Minister Netanyahu has committed to changing this law. The High Court issued a temporary injunction giving the government 90 days to explain why the yeshiva has not been removed in accordance with earlier rulings. At the hearings, the state argued that since the government intends to change the law, the court should refrain from the ruling. The court rejected the argument, saying the yeshiva is built on privately owned land. Chomesh is being viewed by some as a test case in the expected collision between the new right-wing government and the nation's legal system. Right-wing lawmakers have demanded the ability to overturn high court rulings with a simple Knesset majority. Chomesh has become a symbol of the new settlement movement after a terrorist attack on the site resulted in the death of a student and the wounding of 2 others.